In the forum today, you said that one of the things that the Nixon administration raised, a very basic question early on, was who would regulate the regulators? What does that mean, and what was the significance of it?
Oh, I'm glad you picked out. If there's anything I said today, that was the most important. For years, you'd have agencies like EPA, and they'd read the statutes, and the statute said EPA does this. So if anyone didn't like the standard that an agency issued, it was politically cumbersome and sometimes legally accepted as unacceptable to interfere in the rulemaking process. They said it was ex parte now. And so all regulating agencies tend to have a stovepipe mentality. They look at a narrow issue. And so what happened was that continued for years. And what happened was, in my opinion, President Nixon said, I'm going to sign a ton of environmental legislation. Whether he wanted to or not, maybe he did because of the Earth Day and that. So he said, the good news is all the regulation I'm going to have to sign on is going to be tons of regulation issues. The bad news is they're all going to have to go through OMB. And I'm going to have George Shultz send out a 2-paragraph letter called the Quality of Life Review. And it says all environmental health safety regulations go through OMB, and I ran that program. Now, why is it significant? Up to that point in time, if a president, like just recently President Obama, announced that he told EPA not to issue an ozone standard, that would have never occurred without Reagan setting Nixon setting all the processes that made that legal. And so I'm on the Administrative Conference of the U.S., which is a number of leading general counsels of agencies. They say that in probably the most important component of the regulatory state is centralized review, which was created by President Nixon. Now, up to date, he gets no credit for that. It's all Reagan, who I also worked for, when he signed the executive order. And why it's going to come in this administrative law review, 30th article, is going to be a lot on President Nixon. That was huge. Anyone in administrative law will say it was one of the hugest things in the regulatory state. But he never got any credit. We're just going to start giving it to him.
You mentioned, just now you mentioned that there's an article coming up.
Oh, yeah. There is a journal called the Administrative Law Review. It's a law review article, usually published by universities like Harvard Law Review. But this is published by American University. But equally important, it's co-sponsored by the American Bar Association. They have a special edition on OIRA, which is the Office of Information Regulatory Affairs. And so they had leaders, head of it and deputies, speak. And without exception, every speaker other than me said, oh, Reagan did it all. And my whole law article, the first and last that I'll ever write, says, let's go look at the history. And it really gives President Nixon, after 30 years, the due that he has. If you speak, even Justice Breyer made a statement to us today. He said, who regulates the regulators is one of the most important portions of law. Because before it was only the courts and the Congress, and President Nixon set that process in. I think it was absolutely huge. And that didn't get any credit to recently.
You said that there are 4 kinds of regulations.
Oh, I said President Nixon had 4 types of, if you saw his regulatory program for energy, there were 4 components of it. One was regulatory relief, cleaning up regulations, existing regulations. And the other was conservation. He issued a whole set of regulations that made us conserve energy more than we did in the past. And then he issued 2 more, the price controls and price allocation. So the 4 were 4 types of energy regulations that Nixon proposed.
You said that you have a friend, so I assume it's a very good friend, good enough to tell you that listening to you talk about regulations was like watching paint
Well,
dry.
I used to in my early days. I was on the National Archives came over and gave me a big interview, just on Nixon's regulatory program. It's in the archives on the web, and as part of that, they did. I used to try to be a professional musician in New Orleans, so I hang out with them a lot. And one day, I made a speech, and I was in New Orleans, and they said, well, Jim, we're going to go listen to you. And these are very big, famous musicians. And I went there, and I spoke on some individual regulation having to do with the protection of the oceans. And they said, that is like watching paint dry. I said, well, look at my website. And they looked at my website, and they said, that is the most boring website we've ever seen in our life. My whole life is reading stuff that no grown-up will ever want to read.
Well, you said that, though, as a preface, and I thought sort of self-deprecating. Now I'm discovering maybe it wasn't so self-deprecating. But it in the room, it became a self-deprecating preface because I thought you then made a very compelling and concise case for the importance of regulations.
Oh!
That the devil is in the details, and the details are in the regulations.
Oh, yeah. President Nixon and my other two colleagues there, Jim Schlesinger and Dick, could have made all the statements they want. If we didn't turn them into regs, they didn't mean anything. Absolutely not. Going from the policy to that structure, I mean, the oil industries wouldn't have had to listen to anything. It was all those regs that we issued that made things happen. And if you don't have really competent people taking what the policymakers say in the White House or the policymakers in Congress, because the laws are very, very general, you write those regs. And yeah, they wouldn't have had none of the program. The program would be non-existent without the regs. Yeah, they were very key. They were the key. No, we didn't make the policy, but when you implement, you have a lot of elbow room. Oh my God, you use a lot of elbow room. And so it depends who I work for is what way I spin them, you know.
What was the organization of OMB around energy, of the Nixon OMB?
Well, OMB, yeah, we had OMB there, not BOB. We had two sides of OMB. We had the quote-unquote budget side, then the management side had it. On the budget side, we have program associate directors, and Jim Schlesinger was a program associate director for energy. So, and under him there's several divisions. And what they did, that division had control of all energy legislation, all energy budgets, and through me, because I worked in another division, but I coordinated with energy regulations. So that was a very key position. Everything went through them.
Did you have personal experience of observing Nixon?
Only a couple times. I was never in a, yeah, I guess I can say this over the tape.
Wait a minute, let me, what were your observations or experiences of working with or working around Richard Nixon?
Well, I could only judge him because I only saw him in a couple meetings, okay? But I can judge him by the people he appointed. And that really is the complexion of even if you see a president, I saw 5 of them. I worked from Nixon, from Johnson through Reagan. Saw some of them a lot more. The complexion of administration is the people you work for. And I was pretty high up in OMB, and I worked for a lot of high people. And I would vision the Nixon administration as a really, really focused, well-organized group of people. There was nothing fuzzy in their thinking. I mean, it might be fuzzy when you're starting something, but when they came up with a decision, man, it was clear. And they set standards, and they gave you quite a bit of flexibility. I ran all the regulatory programs. I had minimal day-to-day second guess me. I had to report to them on big things, but they tell you exactly what they want, very focused, very management-oriented. It was a very professional group. Nice to work with.
And how
Not great to go drinking with, but great to work for.
How would you summarize the Nixon energy legacy?
Well, I would say his legacy is that he took an issue that was under the rug and really not looked at, and really made it a national issue for the first time, energy. And he really elevated. That wasn't, and Jim said it goes back to Suez. I was around then too, but I mean, I probably went around when they built the damn Panama Canal. I don't know, but anyway, it was that. But he really made that focused, okay. But the implementing mechanisms didn't work very well. I mean, and the legacy I think will be that he highlighted it. I don't think he did much to solve the problem, but I don't think any other president did either. I think we've had a lot of stirring around for all the presidents I wear. Everyone cries energy independence. I don't think it's changed much.
Well, as you say, you've had an opportunity working from Johnson through Reagan and beyond.
Right. Yeah. To Reagan, yeah.
To Reagan, to see that the wheel is reinvented, but the actual you were present at the original creation of the invention of the wheel, which was done in Nixon.
Right, and he did that. What was somewhat disappointing because you know he only had a limited time frame. You know, it really started in '72. When did he leave? In '70.
August of '74.
Yeah, so we only had 2 years. So when I said not much happened, I don't say that pejoratively. He didn't have any time, and at that time we had the oil embargo. Okay, but what I'm saying is that subsequent to that, virtually every administration we haven't we don't have any better track record between '74 and 2011 than we did between. So I'm an equal opportunity employee. I think none of them worked. Okay, what I'm saying, and only Nixon's had 2 years and they had 30 years. Okay, it just we haven't done it much on that issue in my mind.
On a totally unrelated topic, regulations loss was music. Regulations gain was music's loss. What was your go-to if we were now looking at on the shelf behind you your collection of CDs? What would your musical career have been like?
Oh, I started playing in New Orleans jazz, which is different than it's really it's not Dixieland. It's a different jazz, and I recorded a couple with. Very famous singers. I've just played the last funeral I'll play for. My lips are going, and my favorite hall is when they start. It's called a place called Preservation Hall. Okay. Yeah, and I know that played around. And I didn't play there. I played with them. I played a lot of and I hung around. And I know everyone from. And now I played a couple guest celebrity things with their grandchildren. They're past. Yeah. So, but unfortunate thing in New Orleans, even before Katrina, our music is dying. It's down. And I started a federal focused jazz band here where we train young kids in our music thing, but it's hard to get gigs because people haven't heard that kind of music. They see this other kind of music, which not so much, it's not music, it's more entertainment where smoke comes out of your head and and then it's real loud and it doesn't only have 4 chords, and so it's very good entertainment. I'm not sure it would be classified. I mean, not that because they make a lot of money, okay, but I don't think most musicians would call them musicians, is what I'm saying.
Thank you very much.